Have you ever noticed how exhausting it feels to keep fighting the same battles over and over again? The same arguments with yourself, the same doubts about whether you're enough, the same repeating cycles that make you feel as though you're living inside a loop you can't escape. You wake up each morning with the hope that today will be different, yet somehow, the same emotions, the same limitations, the same frustrations keep finding their way back to you. It feels as though your life is a movie stuck on repeat, and no matter how hard you try to fight against it, the script never changes. And maybe that's the exact problem. Maybe the reason nothing shifts is because you've been trained to fight the old timeline, to battle with the version of yourself you no longer want to be. You've been told that growth comes from struggle, that change comes from defeating your demons, that your freedom lies on the other side of pushing harder, fighting harder, resisting harder. But deep down, haven't you felt the truth whispering to you, that the more you fight, the more energy you give to the very reality you're trying to escape? That every ounce of resistance is also an act of reinforcement. This is the paradox. No one talks about when you fight the old timeline, you are still tethered to it. You are still dancing in its frequency, still playing by its rules. And that is why so many people feel like they're working so hard on themselves but getting nowhere. The more they resist their fear, the more fear fills their lives. The more they try to escape scarcity, the more scarcity wraps itself around their days. Fighting the old timeline is like pulling on the bars of a cage. You only prove that you are still inside of it. What if I told you there is another way? A gentler way, a way that feels more like flowing than fighting? What if true transformation doesn't come from struggling against the old but from simply walking out of it? Imagine for a moment that you are standing in a hallway filled with doors. One of them leads to the timeline you're living right now, with all of its limitations and patterns. But just down the hall, other doors are waiting. Doors that lead to realities where you are already free, already abundant, already aligned with who you truly are. You don't need to break down the door you're standing in front of. You only need to turn, take a step, and walk into a new one. This is the essence of quantum manifestation, and it is also the message your higher self has been trying to send you all along. That life is not about endlessly repairing the old self, endlessly patching up the cracks of a timeline that has already expired. Life is about choosing, about embodying the version of you who already exists in a different reality, and stepping into it with trust. And the doorway opens the moment you decide to stop fighting and start walking. I know that right now, that might feel like a dream, almost too simple, too easy, compared to all the effort you've been taught to believe is necessary. But think about this. Hasn't the fighting already shown you where it leads? Hasn't resistance already proven that it keeps you tied to the very cycles you want to escape? If struggle was the answer, you'd already be free. The truth is that your freedom lies in surrender, in letting go of the endless battle with the old, and instead aligning yourself with the energy of the new. Take a breath right now, and feel into this. Notice how much of your energy is still locked up in fighting. Fighting your past, fighting your doubts, fighting your current circumstances. And notice how heavy that feels. That heaviness is proof that resistance is not the path. Now imagine instead redirecting that same energy into embodying a new reality. Imagine how light it feels to say, I don't need to fight anymore. I choose to walk out. I choose to step into something different. That single shift in perspective can change everything. This journey we are about to take together is not about adding more struggle to your life. It's about guiding you into a different way of being. One where you no longer waste your energy fighting with shadows, but instead use your power to walk into light. Over the course of this video, I will take you deeper into the understanding of timelines, show you why fighting the old keeps you stuck, and reveal the key to walking out with ease. You will see that you don't have to keep replaying the same script. You don't have to keep living the same old story. A new story is waiting for you, and the doorway is open. So if you have felt tired of battling, tired of repeating cycles, tired of the endless work that never seems to set you free, then stay with me. Because what you're about to discover may be the most important truth you've ever heard. You don't need to fight the old timeline, you only need to walk out of it, and when you do, you will realize that freedom, joy, and alignment were never far away. They've been waiting for you all along, just on the other side of the door. Have you ever noticed that when you try to fight something in your life, it seems to grow stronger? You tell yourself you're done being afraid, but fear seems to keep showing up. You say you won't let scarcity control you anymore. Yet the bills, the worries, the feeling of not having enough somehow tighten their grip. You promise yourself you're finished with overthinking, but your mind still races at night, keeping you trapped in the same loops. It's almost as if the harder you try to push these patterns away, the louder they become. And there is a reason for that. What most people don't realize is that fighting the old timeline is like feeding it. When you resist it, you're giving it your attention, your focus, your life force. You're standing in the very frequency you want to leave, and instead of moving out of it, you're digging yourself deeper into it. It's like quicksand. The more you struggle against it, the more it pulls you down. Think of it like this. Imagine holding onto a rope in a game of tug-of-war. On the other side of the rope is the old timeline, the old version of you that is filled with fear, doubt, and limitation. You think that if you just pull hard enough, if you just fight harder, you'll win. But here's the truth, the only way to win is to drop the rope. The moment you let go, the game ends. You're free. And yet most people never drop the rope. They keep pulling, exhausting themselves, believing that their victory depends on overpowering the old, not realizing that their freedom was always in walking away. This is why so many spiritual seekers feel stuck. They meditate, they affirm, they visualize, but at the core of it they're still fighting. They're affirming not from a place of alignment, but from a place of lack. They're visualizing not with trust, but with desperation. They're saying, I am abundant, while secretly thinking, I hope this works so I can escape my lack. The energy behind the action is resistance, and resistance always reinforces the very thing we want to leave behind. This is the trap of the old timeline. It convinces you that your freedom depends on fighting it. It whispers that if you just try harder, push more, resist more, you'll finally escape. But that whisper is a trick. It keeps you looping in the same cycle, always on the verge of breakthrough but never quite there. It keeps you busy repairing a house that was never meant to be your home, instead of simply walking out the door and choosing a new dwelling. Have you ever wondered why certain struggles in your life seem impossible to solve, no matter how much energy you pour into them? Maybe it's because you're not meant to solve them. Maybe you're meant to step into a reality where that struggle doesn't exist. The old self wants you to keep fixing it, because that ensures you stay entangled in it. But the higher self is always calling you to let it go and walk into something new. There is another layer here too. Fighting the old timeline often comes from fear. Fear that if you don't fight it, it will consume you. Fear that if you don't resist it, you'll be stuck in it forever. But fear itself is the energy of the old timeline. The moment you believe in that fear, you are choosing to stay anchored in the very reality you want to leave. And so the cycle continues. Fear leads to resistance. Resistance leads to more fear, and the timeline strengthens its hold. But here's what happens when you stop fighting, when you release the rope. When you recognize that you don't need to defeat the old timeline, you only need to step away from it. The old reality begins to dissolve, not because you destroyed it, but because you simply stopped feeding it with your energy. What you stop energizing eventually loses its power. It's like a shadow on the wall. If you spend your whole life wrestling with the shadow, you will never win. But the moment you turn toward the light, the shadow vanishes. Fighting the shadow only keeps you stuck in the dark. Turning to the light frees you without effort. And that's exactly what shifting timelines is about. It's not about defeating the old. It's about aligning with the new. Think for a moment about all the ways you've been fighting. Fighting to prove yourself. Fighting to heal endlessly. Fighting to fix things that keep breaking. Fighting to prove you're worthy of love, abundance, or peace. And now ask yourself, has all that fighting ever truly given you freedom? Or has it only kept you circling around the same patterns, just wearing different disguises? The truth is that fighting is exhausting because it was never meant to be the path. It was never meant to be the way out. The way out is simpler, quieter, and more powerful. It's in surrender. It's in letting go. It's in saying, I don't need to defeat the old story. I choose a new one. And this is where contrast becomes so important. Picture your current self, exhausted, pulling on that rope, battling the same cycles. Then picture your new self, calm, centered, no longer fighting, simply walking forward into a new timeline. Which one feels lighter? Which one feels truer? Which one feels like the version of you your soul has been calling you to embody? You see, fighting the old keeps you chained to the identity of the struggler, but walking out shifts you into the identity of the creator. Fighting says, I am still bound by this reality. Walking says, I am already free, and I choose a new one. One keeps you circling, the other moves you forward, and the difference is not effort, but awareness. So the next time you feel the urge to fight, the urge to wrestle with your fears, your doubts, your limitations, pause. Ask yourself, am I feeding the old timeline by resisting it, or am I ready to walk out of it by choosing differently? That single question can break the loop, because the truth is, you were never meant to keep fighting. You were always meant to walk free. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey where they realize that fighting will never set them free. That moment is the doorway. It's the quiet but powerful shift where you understand that instead of trying to tear down the old timeline brick by brick, you can simply walk out of it. And that choice, simple, almost effortless, is the quantum key. Think about it like this. Reality is not fixed. You are not trapped in one version of life. Instead, reality is a field of infinite possibilities, each one existing as a different timeline, a different frequency. Right now you are tuned into a certain station, much like a radio. That station has its own music, its own vibration, its own storyline. If the station you're tuned into is filled with struggle, fear, and limitation, you don't need to break the radio. You don't need to fight the static. You only need to turn the dial. Another station, another reality, is already there waiting for you. This is where the magic of walking out comes alive. You're not trying to destroy the old frequency. You're not spending your energy tearing apart what already exists. You're simply shifting your focus, your state of being, your alignment, and by doing so you step into a different timeline. That is quantum manifestation. It's not about force, it's about resonance. Here's the secret most people miss. The new reality you desire already exists. Somewhere in the infinite field, there is a version of you who has already made the shift. A version of you who already lives in abundance, who already moves through life with peace, who already embodies the freedom you long for. That version of you isn't separate from you. It's not waiting in the distant future. It's here, now, existing in parallel. And the doorway into that version of reality is not struggle, but choice. Walking out means you begin to embody that version of yourself right now. Not when the money comes, not when the relationship appears, not when the circumstances change, but here in this moment, with nothing external needing to prove itself first. Because the truth is, reality doesn't shift when you wait for it. Reality shifts when you decide for it. So ask yourself, how would the version of me in the new timeline breathe? How would they walk into a room? How would they speak, think, feel, and move through the day? This is embodiment, and it is the key to walking out. You don't wait for the evidence to appear before you live it. You live it, and then the evidence rearranges itself around you. This is why quantum manifestation feels like magic to those who practice it, because the outer world always reflects the inner state. If your inner state is still fighting, resisting, and battling with what is, then the outer world can only mirror back that same struggle. But when your inner state says, I am already free, I am already aligned, I am already abundant, then reality reorganizes itself to match that vibration. You don't push reality to change. You invite it to reflect who you are being. And here's something beautiful. Walking out doesn't require massive leaps. Sometimes it's as simple as making one different choice today. The old self might say, stay small, stay afraid, stay stuck. But the new self says, take that step, speak your truth, trust the path. Each time you choose differently, you're aligning with the new timeline. And with every choice, you strengthen your resonance with it until it becomes your dominant reality. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who has always struggled with scarcity. They're constantly checking their bank account, worrying about bills, fearing there's never enough. Their instinct is to fight the scarcity. More hours at work, more stress, more resistance. But what if instead of fighting scarcity, they walked out into abundance? That doesn't mean ignoring responsibility. It means embodying a new energy, choosing to believe they are supported, choosing gratitude for what they already have, choosing generosity even in small ways. That shift in state from fear to trust, from lack to gratitude, begins to align them with the abundant timeline. And as they hold that state, opportunities, ideas, and synchronicities flow in to match it. Another example, someone who feels unloved, always fighting for validation, always battling the fear of rejection. They think they need to fix themselves, to earn worthiness, to fight their unworthiness into silence. But walking out looks different. It looks like embodying the version of themselves who is already loved, already enough, already whole. They stop chasing validation and begin radiating self-acceptance. And in that shift, they naturally attract relationships that reflect that truth. Do you see the pattern? The old self fights. The new self simply is. The old self struggles to fix. The new self chooses to embody. Walking out is not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering the self you already are in another timeline and choosing to live as them now. And here's something profound. When you walk out, the old timeline doesn't chase you. It only has power as long as you stand in it, as long as you feed it with your focus. The moment you shift, the old begins to dissolve like mist in sunlight. It may echo for a little while, like fading memories, but it no longer defines you. You are no longer anchored there. You've moved. This is why walking out requires courage. Not the courage to fight harder, but the courage to stop fighting altogether, to let go of the familiar struggle and trust the unfamiliar flow. That moment of surrender feels like stepping into the unknown, but the unknown is not empty. It's full of the new reality that's been waiting for you. Take a moment to imagine yourself standing at that doorway. Behind you is the old timeline, heavy, repetitive, filled with struggle. In front of you is the new timeline, lighter, freer, aligned with who you truly are. Feel the difference in your body. One makes your chest tighten, your breath shallow, your shoulders heavy. The other makes you feel expansive, open, alive. Which one do you choose? Walking out is choosing with your whole being. It's saying, I no longer fight to escape. I walk forward because I am free. And as soon as you choose, life begins to rearrange itself. People appear, opportunities open, synchronicities unfold, not because you forced them, but because you aligned with the timeline where they already exist. So remember this, the quantum key is not force, not effort, not resistance. It is resonance, it is alignment, it is embodiment. When you walk out of the old timeline, you don't lose anything real. You only lose the illusion of limitation. What you gain is everything your soul has been asking for. And the beauty of this truth is that the door is always open. At any moment, no matter how stuck you felt, you can step through. The only question is, are you ready to stop fighting and start walking? When you first walk out of the old timeline, it feels liberating. Almost like taking your first deep breath after being underwater for too long. But here is the part most people don't talk about. Stepping into the new reality is only the beginning. The real work is in staying there, in embodying the new version of yourself so fully that it becomes natural, automatic, unquestionable. Because the truth is, the old timeline may still try to call you back, not because it has power over you, but because it's familiar. Its echoes may whisper, trying to remind you of who you used to be. And this is where embodiment becomes the key to living beyond resistance. Embodiment means you stop relating to the new timeline as a distant dream, and you begin relating to it as your home. You no longer say, one day I will be abundant, peaceful, loved, free. You say, this is who I am now, and then you live in ways that match that truth. Every thought, every choice, every action becomes an opportunity to strengthen your alignment with the new self. But notice how different this feels compared to fighting. Fighting says, I must push away the old pattern. Embodiment says, I will walk as the new version of me. The difference is subtle but life-changing. One drains your energy, the other restores it. One keeps you circling the past, the other moves you deeper into the reality you've chosen. Let's make this practical. Suppose you've walked out of a timeline of scarcity into a timeline of abundance. To embody this, you begin noticing where old scarcity habits try to sneak back in. The worry when you pay a bill, the hesitation before spending, the panic that rises when something unexpected happens. Instead of fighting those feelings, you gently realign. You ask yourself, what would my abundant self choose here? And then you act from that place. Maybe your abundant self practices gratitude instead of fear. Maybe they trust that money flows back. Maybe they allow themselves to enjoy small luxuries without guilt. Each time you make a choice in alignment with abundance, you anchor yourself more deeply into that new timeline. Or imagine you've stepped out of a timeline of loneliness and into one of love and connection. To embody this, you stop seeking love as if it's missing, and you start radiating love as if it's already here. You speak kindly to yourself. You open your heart in small interactions with strangers. You treat your own presence as sacred, and by doing this, you stop vibrating at the frequency of lack and begin vibrating at the frequency of love. From that state, love in all its forms flows naturally into your life. This is how embodiment works. It's not about perfection, it's about alignment in the small everyday moments. It's about catching yourself when the old self whispers and gently redirecting back into the new. It's about consistency, not intensity. Tiny choices build momentum, and momentum makes the new timeline solid, unshakable. Living beyond resistance also means no longer needing to prove yourself to the old reality. You don't need to prove that you're healed, prove that you're worthy, prove that you've changed. Proving still ties you to the old. Instead, you simply be. You live as the new self without explanation, without justification. That quiet certainty is what creates undeniable results. There is another layer here too. Embodiment requires trust. Trust that the new reality is real, even before it fully shows itself. Trust that your alignment is enough to magnetize the experiences you desire. The old self was addicted to control, always asking, how will this happen? When will this happen? What if it doesn't happen? But the new self knows that the how and the when are not your job. Your only job is to embody the state of being where it has already happened. The rest unfolds naturally. Think of it like planting a seed. You don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You water it, you nurture it, and you trust that life itself will bring it into bloom. Embodiment is the watering, trust is the sunlight, and patience is the soil where the new timeline takes root. Now, of course, there will be moments where the old self resurfaces. Perhaps you slip back into fear, doubt, or struggle. That doesn't mean you failed, it only means you are human. The key is not to panic, not to fight yourself for slipping, but to gently return to alignment. Like a musician tuning an instrument, you bring yourself back to harmony, again and again, until harmony becomes your natural state. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you embody the new timeline, the less effort it takes. At first it may feel deliberate, even awkward, like learning a new dance, but over time it becomes second nature. You no longer think about how to walk as the new self. You simply are the new self. The old timeline fades into a distant memory, and the new one becomes the only reality you recognize. So as you continue this journey, ask yourself daily, am I feeding the old story, or am I living the new one? Let that question guide you, and with each choice, remember that you are not battling with resistance anymore. You are living beyond it. You are embodying freedom, abundance, love, peace, or whatever reality you have chosen. That is how the shift becomes permanent. That is how you anchor yourself in the new timeline, until it is no longer just a choice, it is your identity. And when you live this way, something miraculous happens. Life stops feeling like a fight. It begins to feel like flow. Synchronicities multiply, opportunities unfold, the right people appear, and all of it feels effortless because it is aligned. You are no longer trying to force reality to bend. You are simply resonating with the reality that was already yours, and life is reflecting it back to you. So remember, the key is not just walking out of the old timeline once. The key is continuing to embody the new self, moment by moment, choice by choice, until it becomes who you are. No more proving, no more fighting, no more resistance, only alignment, only embodiment, only flow. And so, here we are, standing together at the end of this journey. But perhaps it is not an ending at all. Perhaps this is the true beginning, because now you know the truth that was hidden in plain sight all along. You don't need to fight the old timeline. You don't need to keep proving yourself, battling the past, or exhausting your spirit in endless resistance. All you ever needed was to realize that the doorway was already open. When you stop fighting and simply walk out, life shifts in ways that words can barely capture. Suddenly, the heaviness you carried for so long begins to dissolve. The fears that once seemed so solid lose their grip. The doubts that haunted you shrink into shadows that no longer matter. Because you are no longer standing inside the old story. You are walking freely in a new one. And the beauty is, this choice is available to you in every moment. You don't need to wait for the perfect time. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to see the entire path ahead. You only need to take one step, the step of choosing to embody the self who already exists in a higher timeline. That one decision shifts everything. Remember this. Fighting keeps you in the loop, but walking frees you from it. Fighting keeps you tied to the identity of struggle, but walking aligns you with the identity of creation. The old timeline can only survive if you feed it. The new timeline becomes your home the moment you embody it. And the more you embody, the stronger it grows, until one day you look around and realize the old story has vanished completely. So as you leave this space today, take a breath and feel into the choice that is before you. Will you continue pulling on the rope, exhausting yourself in battles that were never yours to win? Or will you drop the rope, turn toward the light, and walk forward into the timeline your soul has been calling you toward? The choice has always been yours, and it always will be. Know this, you are not broken, you are not behind, you are not trapped. You are a creator, a shifter of realities, a being who holds within them the power to step into infinite versions of life. And today, in this very moment, you can choose the one that resonates with freedom, peace, and alignment. The door is already open. You don't need to break it down. You don't need to fight your way through. You only need to walk, and as you do, the universe will meet you there, arranging everything to reflect the new self you have chosen to be. So walk forward now. Walk with trust. Walk with love. Walk knowing that you are free. Because the old timeline no longer defines you. You are the one who defines reality, and the reality you choose is waiting for you, just one step away.